I love Derpy Tiger from K-pop Demon Hunters, so I painted the adorable blue tiger on a tiny pumpkin. I'll show you the whole process, including all the supplies you need, and you can download my free pumpkin painting checklist so you don't miss anything. So with the supplies that you need, we've got, of course, our pumpkins, container for water. I've got Mod Podge, which I use as a sealer before and after you use the paint. Here I've got Apple Barrel Craft paint in bright blue for Derpy. And then I've got some acrylic markers. I believe they're the Winston brand. Paintbrushes, paper towels, plate, and wax paper. So the wax paper is so the pumpkin doesn't stick to the surface when you're drying it. I'm just using a silicone mat, and here, after I've cleaned the pumpkin, just wipe off all the dirt, I'm putting the first layer of sealant on it. So the one I'm using is Mod Podge, which is a little bit sticky. And then I'm starting off with the first layer of acrylic paint. And it's nice when you're doing the little pumpkins, you could just hold it by the stem to kind of rotate it. And then I pretty much just paint one side first, let it dry, and then you can paint the other side. I have quarters, and for the size of this pumpkin, it worked out perfectly to trace the eyes for the pumpkin, because Derpy's eyes are really the biggest feature of his face. So they take up probably like 1/3 of his face, and they're really set far apart from each other. So I tried to leave at least 1/4 size in between them. And then I'm going over that pencil mark with the yellow acrylic marker. And I recommend doing the outline first and then filling in the inside. And when you go over with the marker, just use a really light touch. When you start kind of pressing really hard into it, it will start lifting up the acrylic paint layer underneath it. And then it tends to just smear around. So you also want to make sure that your layers are very dry in between putting a second layer of paint on, so that you don't get smearing. The next color I grabbed is an orange color, and I just did 2 triangles around the sides of the circle to make it more pointy at the ends. For the ears, I placed them above the eyes and very close to where the corner of the eyes are, and I just made them like 2 rounded triangles. Then I did the nose in pink, and that is just an upside down triangle between the 2 eyes. Now, to make all these shapes really stand out, I'm going to go over and outline all the shapes with a black paint marker. And you can start off with a thin line around the edges and then kind of make it as thicker or bolder as you want just by going over it again. And this will really help to hide some of the messiness if you didn't have very sharp edges to your shapes for the yellow and orange and pink. Now we're going to do the rest of Derpy's iconic features, which are the 3 dots that are going up on his forehead in the very middle of both eyes. And then we're going to do some stripes or eyebrows, and you just want to kind of follow the curve of the 2 eyes, and they kind of just go kind of close to where the 3 dots are. And then don't forget to put 2 smaller dots on top of the yellow area where the eyes are, and you can have them pointing in different directions if you want them to look more derpy. Now onto the mouth. So right where the nose is, in the middle of the triangle, I put a line going down, and then I'm making the mouth really wide. So it starts off in the middle and then it goes all the way to the end where the ends of the eyes are. And then I'm making kind of like a really big smile, the outline of the smile. Sorry, the angle of the camera wasn't that great here. So just 2 like really wide arches, and then I'm filling in the middle with the black marker again. And then this area, you want to make sure it dries really, really well, because you're going to go over it with white marker to make the fangs and the teeth. And if it's still a little bit wet, you're gonna get the white blending, and then it's gonna turn into like a really muted gray color. So definitely make sure that area is very dry before you go over it with the white marker. And then the last step, once everything is dry, is to once again go over it with the sealer. And this just protects the paint from chipping and giving it a nice shine. Here's the final pumpkin. Derpy, looking good. And the only thing I would change is if you want to do a little flower pot, these are Lego flowers that I had, is to change the position of the eyes so that they're actually looking down at the Legos.